let's briefly consider some objections or criticisms of each of these theories. Let's start with natural law theory. One way to object to this theory is by focusing on the four intrinsic values or the four intrinsic goods for humans. For instance, you could argue that some of those suggested intrinsic goods are not genuinely intrinsic goods. For instance, you might want to argue that procreation is not always morally valuable or valuable in a positive way. Of course, procreation can be of positive value, but there may be instances or cases of procreation that are actually, where they actually create more evil than good. You can think of perhaps a situation where the parents of this would-be child are drug addicts. And if this child is born, it's going to be born into a very challenging environment, where there's drugs everywhere, and maybe this family's living in poverty. And so you may ask yourself, is procreation in this case genuinely a good thing? Is there value in this procreation in and of itself? Remember, that's what intrinsic value is, when something possesses value in and of itself. We may say that there are some cases where, these goods are not intrinsically valuable. Or, for instance, take the suggested intrinsic value of knowledge. Maybe, like having knowledge of the way that the world works is intrinsically valuable, or having knowledge of math or science is intrinsically valuable. But is having knowledge about how to create a nuclear bomb intrinsically valuable? I mean, wouldn't the world be a better place if nobody had that knowledge of how to create a nuclear weapon? Just some things to consider, right? You may want to challenge one or more of those intrinsic goods and essentially say, look, I don't think this thing is intrinsically valuable. If anything, it's only extrinsically valuable. It derives its value from something else. But maybe we can't say that in every case, all the time, each of these four things is always intrinsically valuable. Another way to object to natural law theory is to try to pick out another thing of intrinsic value that's left out by the theory. So, for instance, you may agree that the four intrinsic goods suggested by natural law theory are intrinsic goods for human beings. But you may want to say that those aren't the only four, that there are more than that. For instance, you may want to say that pleasure and happiness are of intrinsic value as well, right? Notice the natural law theorist does not believe that happiness and pleasure are of intrinsic value. If anything, happiness and pleasure, according to natural law theory, only have extrinsic value, because they're only valuable if they're related to one of the other four intrinsic goods. So maybe you think that there's an additional intrinsic good that should be added to the list, and technically that would be criticizing natural law theory for leaving out that other intrinsic good. In regards to social contract theory, one way we may object to this theory is by objecting to those main tenets regarding the objective facts about human beings. So, for instance, maybe you disagree that humans are selfish. Maybe you think that genuine altruism is possible. And if so, you could criticize this particular aspect of social contract theory. Another possible objection to raise against social contract theory is the realistic of of the theory? Is it realistic? More specifically, is the original position and the veil of ignorance a realistic position to put ourselves in? Can we genuinely wear the veil of ignorance where we imagine ourselves totally disconnected from our personal biases and our personal interests? You may object that that's not possible, that that's not realistic, that that's very idealistic of social contract theory, but that it can't really actually happen. That as selfish beings, we cannot take on this unbiased, impartial perspective truly in a genuine way. And so if we can't do that, then at least John Rawls' version of social contract theory would seem to be slightly impossible or implausible. So those are some ways in which you might begin to object to one or both of these theories.